Hey guys, May the 4th be with you. Welcome to a new class of American and European relations. Today we're going to be talking about the European Union expansion, and also as a collateral we're going to be talking about Turkey. But before I move on to talk about this issue, let me tell you about the final exam. You know, I've already sent you in the email the date. It's going to be open the whole day, so you can take it anytime you want during that day, and you will have 1 hour and a half to write this analysis. You'll be able to consult the material that I'm not going to be able to prevent this. So just make it as compelling as possible, because what I'm going to ask you is what you can see on the screen. I'm going to ask you that based on international relation theory, the historical background, or on the European Union or American institutional differences, to choose one issue, one policy issue, one topic: Russia, China, the European Union expansion, Turkey, counter-terrorism. Take the scope, the dimension, the analysis you want to make an analysis. By the end of the day, I want you to apply what we learned, in the first half of the semester. I want you to be able to apply that to an issue and to throw in there terms as identities. I want you to be able to use the anarchy. I want you to talk about hegemons. I want you to talk about international organizations. I want you to talk about cooperation through the economy and creating interdependencies and how that might affect. I want you to talk about how the historical identity of the United States has been changing or not. I want you to talk about how Russia's identity changed as well and how that's affect the United States. I want you to talk about how history changed and the threat of the that NATO faced before the collapse of the Soviet Union does no longer exist, and this changed the world order. These are all ideas. I just want you to write a compelling analysis based on this. Okay. If you have any doubt, just email me about this and I'll try to reply to you as soon as possible. These being said, also happy days, because we are already coming more or less out of the confinement in Spain. Now we're able to go out to practice sports, and from Monday we're going to be able to meet friends again. So happy days, and I wanted to share it with you. I hope that you are still safe and that you are going through these crises in the best way possible. This being said, let's talk about what we're going to be dealing with in class. We're going to first talk about the treaties and how the enlargement of the European Union works and what are the requirements. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the enlargement process and what has happened with that. And in the other video, I'm going to talk about future enlargement and the other way around. First, I'm going to talk about the Balkans, and then I'm going to talk about Turkey. So let's get it started. And I want to ask you, this will be something that we'll discuss with you in class. I'm not going to discuss it here, but I wanted to know if you knew what do territories need to become part of the United States? If, for example, if Puerto Rico wanted to be a new state of the Union, what will Puerto Rico need? Okay, ask yourself this question if you don't know about it, but it's an important one by the end of the day. I'm going to tell you today, what do countries need to enter the European Union, so a different union? And actually, the Treaty of the European Union, Lisbon Treaty, answers this question in a sense, not completely, but any European state which respects the values referred in Article 2 and is committed to promoting them may apply to become a member of the European Union. It seems like everyone can be part of the European Union. I mean, we already more or less know Article 2, remember, because this one, the one that trigger Article 7, that Article 7 could be triggered if these values were not respected: freedom, democracy, equality, rule of law, human dignity, respect of human rights. So obviously this was a given by the end of the day, that you have to follow these and respect these values. So, but there's more than this, because this will be almost anyone. And actually these, the criteria were established in 1993 in Copenhagen, and just before the Scandinavian expansion. And there are 4 criteria. The first criteria, geographic criteria. This makes a lot of sense. By the end of the day, I mean, if you want to be part of the European Union, you have to be in Europe. Even though Europe is a flexible, it's a term that might have different meanings, because by the end of the day, is Russia Europe? Is it not? Is Israel Europe, even though it's in Asia? Is it not? There are many dimensions to this issue. I'm mentioning Israel because even though it might sound weird, because, for example, Israeli teams play the European Champions League, or Israel competes in Eurovision. So where does the geographic criteria take us. It's rather flexible. Next criteria is democratic criteria. It actually refers to the respecting the values of Article 2. Next criteria is an economic one, but at the end of the day, if you're gonna join the European Union, there is a single market. You need to be able to survive in that market. So by the end of the day, is making sure that you're following those same principles and that you are not, by the end of the day, subsidizing your economy. Actually, Spain had to go through this process in the 80s, and it was rather painful for our industry. And last but not least, we can call it a legal criteria, but we don't normally refer to it like that in Europe. We refer to it as acquis communautaire. Acquis communautaire, it's by the end of the day, I think, yeah, incorporating European legislation to your national legislation. So when you enter the union, you are subject to the same legislation that any other member state. And actually, it doesn't happen from one way to another. This happens through a period of time. So these are the 4 criteria that were established in 1993 that countries now have to fulfill. How is the process? The process starts with a candidate and actually submitting your candidates. Oh my God. Yeah, you're submitting your proposal to be a candidate to become a member. Then actually, when you're accepted as a candidate, negotiations begin. And well, negotiations normally take a couple of years, and eventually this process finishes with membership. What are the negotiating chapters? Right now in the European Union, there are 35 of them, and actually they refer to the 4 criteria we were mentioned before. For example, if we look at chapter number 23, this falls on the field of acquis communautaire, but also falls under the democratic criteria. Or if we look at, for example, let's look for one that is market. Food safety, clearly economic criteria, and obviously not democratic one. So by the end of the day, this 35 chapter are just a way of breaking down those 4 criteria we mentioned before. And each country will have its own portfolio, so to say, its own white book, kind of, with these 35 chapters. And each of these 35 chapters is going to be negotiated individually with each country, and the requirements might change from one country to another, because the European Union understands that becoming a member, it's also a process, and that over time countries are going to be able to comply with the requirements of the Union itself, or at least that was the logic that it's shown rather problematic. If not a member, what other options countries have? Obviously, if one of these 4 criteria is not fulfilled, what other options countries have? The European Neighbourhood Policy. And these are the countries that you can see in the map that are now part of the European Neighbourhood Policy. And what does being a neighbour mean? It means that we cooperate. That we cooperate to try to promote good governance, democracy, economic development, security, migration, mobility, etc., etc. How do we do it? Actually, this is an interesting part for countries that are part of this framework, through funding. 15 billion fund for this strengthening the neighborhood policy. And obviously this is in the interest of Europe. If you have stable neighbors, you're safer at home. And that's the whole logic behind it. And also that you can profit from this economically through trade. So it actually pays off investing money in these countries. So actually you get return eventually. So what has happened over time? The enlargement from 6 to 15 to 28 to 27. And well, you see that the process, I'm not going to stop at it, but actually you see how in 2004 was a large enlargement. And countries that were not traditionally part of the West, so to say, in the Cold War narrative, they entered the European Union, and this was a challenge for the European Union because other enlargement processes were rather smaller, and including countries that that the economies could can match the European one pretty easily. And obviously the United Kingdom that left this year no longer part of the European Union. However, this has created a gap. And actually, when we understand the culture and when we understand, by the end of the day, the identities of these countries that enter into the 2004 enlargement, in the Eastern enlargement, we can see how different we are. For example, if we, in the Eurobarometer, I think this is, no, this is actually part of the peer research center. I thought it was Eurobarometer. But when asked who say that they will be willing to accept Muslims as member of their family, this is incredible, how there's a big gap between the West that mostly says yes, and the East of Europe that mostly says no. Another question of those ages 18 to 34, so young people, who say that they oppose or strongly oppose allowing gays and lesbians to marry legally. And we once again see the massive gap between the East of Europe and the West of Europe. And obviously these create tensions as well. We know what's happening with Poland, or what's happening with Hungary. And obviously there's a more of a identity issue there, and how this identity has not really changed since 2004, even though the European Union is expected to promote change in those countries, but still hasn't happened. So this was about it in the first half of the class. We're going to have a break now. In the second video, we're going to talk about future enlargement. So see you in a minute.